pro tips. Thank you for showing up today. If you never liked, subscribe, or followed our channel before, make sure you do so now. That way you get the updated, latest content as soon as we drop it. Today, I'm going to talk about how to use kind of the big picture to kind of train yourself so that way you can see things correctly. Here's the hardest thing about business, especially when you're in business and you don't have a board of directors. If you do have a board of directors, then you actually have a little bit of a standard. So you have to build standards outside of your ways of thinking if you want to be successful, especially in business, because quite naturally our emotions can take over. So today on the show, I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to attack some points of views. These points of views will help you. It definitely has helped me. I had to learn these views early on, so I kind of started developing these set of skills. And then people always ask me, what books am I reading? I'll give you a little bit of a clue, and this may throw you off completely, but some of the books that I explore and articles or research papers that I actually do look at on metacognitive thinking. That's right. That's data that comes from metacognitive, looking at information that's out there the way that people think. Quite naturally, you can actually cultivate a negative way of processing information. Now, you and me may not like to openly confess this, but let's go through the process. When you first have a situation that you don't like, what's your natural default? How come you go to that natural default of looking at things instead of looking at it circumspectly like an owl where you can move your head 360 degrees? You kind of look at it from a standpoint of why me versus how come I'm looking at this wrong? There's something I need to learn. So one of the things I did when I was developing the proper way of thinking was kind of looking at metacognitive thinking. Another one is being fully aware of self-awareness. And now I don't mean when we talk about a lot of times you have this process now in society which we live, talk about self-worth. I'm not referring to that. Self-awareness is where am I at in the whole scheme of things and what role do I play? How much of everything I'm responsible for? Let's say if there's miscommunication between me and a partner, or me and a wife, or me and my brother, or me and my dad, me and a coworker, what is my responsibility? Automatically, I say 60% of the misunderstandings I'm going to take responsibility for. That's not the normal deflect. But the reason I say I want to take 60% and leave 40% to them is because I want to be able to mature when it comes to my communication. So if I take the greater responsibility, that means I'm going to be more poignant, more direct, and more clear in my speech. Miscommunication is because we actually leaving some standards out there. I mean, we have mile markers on the interstate. So if something happens and you break down, and we have northwest, east, south, eastbound, westbound, they're all there because in case of emergencies, there are things that we need to know to communicate to somebody who needs to come pick us up. Car breakdown, it's in the middle of the night. What mile marker are you at? What interstate are you on? These things are going to be important. Now, I'm not saying that, these positions that we sometimes find ourselves in are not data points. But here's the thing. If you want to mature and you want to get stronger in business, you want to get stronger in communications, especially with a loved one, and especially if you're a guy, if you want to stop doing this, that's right. That's that look down. I always say, I used to say this when I was early on in dating. I used to always tell, please make sure your toenails are painted. And they were like, what? Toenails painted? That's exactly right. Because I know when you're ready to yell at me, all I'm doing is be looking down. And I don't want to see no chipped toenail polish. I mean, I'm already in trouble. So I want to be looking down with my head down, not trying to address the issue and looking at some feet that got chipped up toenail polish on it. So that was my thing early on when I was young, when I was dating. No matter who you was, make sure your toenails are always on point. Because when I got to hear your mouth, I can only look down. Because if I look up, you're going to think I'm saying something I shouldn't say. Well, these are things that help you. So let's go over a couple of things that you could do. And one of the things I had to learn was to take 60% of the responsibility and all miscommunication. That's right, 60%. Now, you may say to yourself, I'm not taking 60%. But think about it, though. If you take the lion's share, one of the most important things that you will always learn is that you will be the best communicator in the room. You're not going to make a mistake and hold back. You're going to communicate so clearly that whoever's listening to you, they're definitely going to yield to what you're saying. Here's another thing. When you actually speak, one of the things that I think is important for anybody is when we do communicate, let's leave the idioms out. Let's leave any type of short English abbreviations out of the conversation. Let's not use you know what I mean. No, these are all idioms. You want to be so clear, especially in business, that if a person only has one choice when you're very, very clear, all they can do is rebel against you. Whatever you're addressing, you want to make it to the point where if I communicate, the only result is either we agree or you rebel. That's it. That's it. That's the best way to be a leader. And that's one of the benefits when you're taking 60% of the thing. Here's the other thing. Make sure that you always, when you are getting the opportunity to strengthen the way that you communicate and also mentally when you're going through the process of, take a time, take a deep breath. I know sometimes people don't like a hard pause. When someone asks you a question, learn how to just hard pause, like go through it in your mind. Now we know that our minds work so fast that we have a comeback before the first person even finishes, especially if we assume where they're going with the communication. Our bodies kind of we rise up. We say, I know what you're saying, I know what you're saying, I know what you're saying. But no, you don't. I mean, none of us are omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. So we really have to be able to hesitate. Remember, a lot of times bad communication is because we're using our emotions before we use our ears. Now remember, we got two ears for a reason. One mouth, two ears, two nostrils. Now you only got one mouth though. Now to keep, I mean, you may have two lips. That's something that my well, my brother said, well, I got two lips, so I'm gonna at least speak for each lip. But in the process of becoming, and then how do you go through the process of developing stronger thought patterns? Here's another example to strengthen your thought patterns. Whenever you go into a situation, always, even though it's quite natural to see it from your point of view, train yourself to see it from their point of view and then give a suggestion that to get them to see that you're there with them. Um, Early on, when you first learn about business, everyone comes up to you, especially if you're in the marketing department of any company or you're doing any form of sales. The person that you're speaking to say, what's in it for me? So their point of view is always going to be about them. Well, take that same concept and say, all right, whoever I'm talking about, they're going to say, what's in it for me with them? What's in it for me? How does this benefit me? They exclude me. They are not thinking about me. So the first thing I do is make sure in the conversation that I include them. Second, I got to also remind them that I'm in the conversation with them. It's not a dialogue, it's a monologue. I mean, it's a monologue, not a dialogue. Definitely not. It is a dialogue, not a monologue. It's not a one-sided conversation. So if I only make everything about you, it excludes me, and I only reinforce. That's right, reinforce a cultivation where the person believes the whole world centers around them, and that's not what my goal is. To be an effective communication and also help you where you think. You got to make sure that you cultivate where one, you make sure you put them first, but second, you make sure that you include that you're part of the conversation. And here's another one, point three. If you really want to be a good communicator, you're going to have to do the one thing that's very difficult: tolerate self centeredness. You got to get very good at tolerating it. Now, here's the thing: we all can smell it a mile away. I mean, we smell somebody being self centered, it's a straight turn off. I mean, if you've ever been around me long enough, you know that I say, may I speak? Can I speak freely? Well, when I speak freely, it's actually going after the one thing that I do know. It's either my self-centeredness, which I'm excluding you, or your self-centeredness, where you're excluding me. We all have attributes that we were given that belong only to us. It allows us to be the individuals that we need to be, and also to facilitate our role in life. So when it comes to a pro tip for business, we need to make sure that we're constantly developing the mindset. I'm gonna point out something that I had saw really quickly off the subject for it's not off, it's on the subject, but it's off the subject as far as me looking at the camera because my eyes about to go off for a second. And it has to do with this. Um, One of the biggest mistakes that I think a lot of us do is we don't know how to practice self-regulation. Now that I couldn't remember what that word was, I said, wait a minute. Self-regulation, okay. Now you may say, what do you mean self-regulation? Yes, self-regulation is not where I have to defend myself in a conversation. I have to practice controlling myself in every conversation. One of the fastest things we like to do when we get into a conversation where we don't have self-control is to flee the conversation. We want out of it. Either the person is communicating in a way we feel like we getting bombarded with killing intent. That's right. What happens when we feel somebody telling us something that we know we didn't do? It feels like killing intent. It's like it's a strong pressure, like where's the escape route to get out of this conversation? Well, it's not a killing intent. What it really is the fact that they are stressing that in that tough conversation, you have truly, truly either made them upset, pissed them off, or frustrated with you. Well, in this stint, when this takes place, we need to also know how to practice self-regulation in the conversation, because the key is this: it is quite natural that we can make somebody mad because we're individuals and we're selfish. But can you practice self-regulation where every conversation where it gets, we like to call it heated. Now, heated doesn't mean you raise your voice. It just means that there's tension and it feels like it's pressure. It feels like killing intense in the room. But can I work through this process that when the conversation's over, I can get a hug or get a handshake? Could we restore the relationship? Because a person who's very, very good and real at not leaving but practicing self-regulation in the conversation, when it's all said and done, they can speak freely. And we know we have those groups of individuals in the world. And I used to be that way before I'm the way I am now. And that was, let me tell you how I feel. No, I don't want to learn how, I don't want to, no, no, don't tell me how you feel, because that doesn't have any self-regulation associated with it. And that's the one thing. If you say a lot, let me tell you how I feel, you do not practice self-regulation. You practice trash can dumping. You practice taking what we like to call shredded paper, egg on the face. It's an emotional warfare. Like, oh, you made me mad. Let me show him a one up on you. No, practicing self regulation is not telling somebody how they feel. It's taking a moment to saying, okay, I know how I feel. And how I feel is not going to trump how they feel. They got the right to their feelings. I got the right to my feelings. But we still got to have a dialogue, not a monologue where I'm saying one thing, they saying another. You can easily tell if you don't have good communication skills at times, because there's going to be two monologues, no dialogue. You're not listening what I'm saying. Oh, no, no, you're not listening what I'm saying. This lets us know that we are having a conversation, but it's a conversation of monologues. Well, one of the business pro tips today is to reflect on this. Am I having monologue conversations where one person's having a monologue, then I do my monologue? I mean, it's not Saturday Night Live, but it can be live in that conversation where by the time it's all said and done, there's nothing that's really been resolved from that conversation. We did have a conversation, but there's nothing to be resolved. Well, you can't practice those skills in your personal life and be effective CEO, executive, board of directors member. You just can't. You have to be able to communicate effectively and then willingly. And at the same time, know that, it's a warning sign. Man, I really want to tell them how I feel. Warning, don't do it. See, your feelings are for you to work through, not to, again, feelings for us to work through. This is why it's so important for us to practice and then learn to look at cognitive information. I mean, because if we don't, what we end up becoming is an emotional creatures that have, WMDs, words of mass destructions. Okay. Again, words of mass destructions, we think is validated because our emotions said we already or hit the nuke button. That's what our emotions say, especially when it's uncomfortable. Well, we need to be able to make sure that these are methods that we do not employ. Relationships get better. Employees and bosses communicate better. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not always going to be easy to deal with people in the world. This whole video is not about being easy. It's about you being 60% better than the person that you're dealing with. That's right. Call me wrong for saying it, but being 60% better than them. Because every day we should be looking for opportunities to be able to not only deal with critical thinking internally. We don't want to. Now, some people say, you got to be very, very self-aware. I know I'm self-aware. I'm selfish. I mean, let's start from that starting point. If you're self-aware, you should automatically know you're selfish. That should be a warning sign that I'm having a conversation. Now, when I'm by myself, I can be selfish for myself. Let's say I'm working and I don't want to eat. I'm not going to eat. So being that I don't eat, later on, I can't go to the house. I'm like, babe, I didn't eat today. Or I can't say, mom, I didn't eat. Can't say, dad. Or can't tell my, I'm so hungry, I haven't eaten. Well, I was being selfish. I chose not to eat. Did I communicate that? Or am I communicating that I haven't ate all day and it wasn't fair because I was just working? That's not true. The reality is I chose not to eat, and now I'm choosing to eat, and I should not bring that up in this conversation in order to make the person that I'm communicating with feel bad. These are all habits that I have done in the past, especially if I know I went home and no food was made. I'll be like, I haven't eaten all day. I've been working, and that's a form of manipulation. That's right. I said it. I did it. I know I did it because I could have ate. I'm a grown man. Do you think I really got to wait for somebody to cook? I mean, a pot. All these things I ride past? Well, how come I make that statement? Because I don't want to cook. I want to make sure the other person cook. So these are all things that we've developed in our communication. And when we've done that, we've actually pushed it off on someone else. But if you want to get very, very good at critical thinking and working through and having a higher intelligence. Now, I'm not saying that having a higher intelligence means you're smarter than anybody in the room. You're smart enough not to fool yourself in the room. That's what I mean by how to. I am not going to be so intelligent that I think that I can talk my way out of every conversation, manipulate a person. No, no. I am fully self aware that I am self centered first. The person I'm dealing with is also self-centered first. They're gonna have a point of view, and I'm gonna have a point of view. And once I have that understanding, that's two monologues, not a dialogue. Once I make a point, they're gonna make a point. Monologue. Quickly, I got to get out of this monologue position. This is when we begin to work through in our minds. I'm not afraid to have any conversation with any female and any male on the face of this earth. I just learned to say, may I speak freely? Until Wednesday, when we go through a business pro tip. And unless you're one of the subscribers, which I'll be chatting with you in a second on the subscription side of it, don't forget to like, don't forget to follow, don't forget to share this video. There also in the body, I'll put some other things that you can actually look at, take some notes down, and actually there's some key points in the body of this video as well. It gives you the opportunity to see some of the references that you would need. But this is what we got to do in times like this. In order for us to become wiser adults, we have to be willing to place ourselves to become wise. We can't get wise in a low frequency. Well, I'm not gonna say low frequency. That's a conversation I normally have with somebody that's talking about low frequency, high frequency. But in retrospect, we cannot become mature until we place ourselves in a position to be mature. And we cannot get more sophisticated and be able to have an understanding and compassion for people when we only have compassion for ourselves. To Wednesday, when we'll talk about a subject of how to develop the skills to destroy the market. You guys have a wonderful day.